Every monument hides a story. Every stone whispers a past. Welcome to History Vault, where history comes alive. In the heart of Washington, D.C., stands a mansion that is more than stone and paint, more than history and politics. It has been burned and rebuilt, haunted by legends and guarded by secrets. Behind its white columns lie the echoes of power, whispers of destiny, and mysteries that refuse to fade. This is not just a house. It is a living symbol of a nation, where history breathes and shadows linger. The story of the White House begins in a moment of hope, ambition, and quiet mystery, when a newly born nation sought a home worthy of its highest leader and the ideals it aspired to project. In 1791, George Washington himself selected the site on Pennsylvania Avenue, though he would never live to step through its doors. A year later, a competition was announced to design the president's house, and the winning plan came from James Hoban, an Irish-born architect whose vision carried echoes of the grand neoclassical traditions of Europe. With its stately columns and balanced symmetry, the design reflected a desire for permanence, stability, and authority, but also for openness, a symbol of Republican democracy as opposed to the monarchies of the Old World. Yet, behind its graceful lines, the construction of the White House carried with it darker truths and untold stories. Much of the labor was performed by enslaved African Americans, working side by side with immigrants and skilled craftsmen. Their sweat and toil laid the very foundation of what would become one of the most recognized buildings on Earth. Though for decades, their contributions remained shrouded in silence, a shadow under the bright facade of liberty. When construction began in October 1792, it was no grand palace, but rather a muddy worksite where stone was quarried, bricks were set, and scaffolding surrounded the growing structure. The sandstone used in the building was hauled from Aquia Creek in Virginia, giving the walls their characteristic pale color. Though the house would not officially be called the White House until Theodore Roosevelt formalized the name in 1901. At first, it was simply known as the President's House or the Executive Mansion. The building took nearly 8 years to complete, and by the time it stood ready in 1800, George Washington had passed away, leaving the honor being the first resident to John Adams. But for Adams and his wife Abigail, moving into the new home was far from the grandeur one might imagine today. The house was incomplete, rooms unfinished, and walls bare. Fires were used to warm the vast, drafty chambers, and Abigail famously hung her laundry in what would later become one of the grand ceremonial rooms. The sense of history being made was clear, yet there was also an air of isolation. The home sat in what was in a sparse and marshy area of Washington, surrounded more by wilderness than by the bustling capital it would later overlook. Still, the symbolism of the house was powerful. In its neoclassical lines, foreign visitors recognized a conscious rejection of monarchy and imperial palaces. Unlike Versailles or Buckingham Palace, the president's house was not meant to oval, but to represent the people's government. Its architecture borrowed from ancient Rome and Greece, civilizations whose republican ideals inspired America's founders. But there was also an aura of mystery in its design. The house seemed to belong to another world. Standing solitary on a hill, its pale facade glowing in the early morning mist, almost as though it had emerged from a vision of the future. Over the years, the building began to grow into its role as both residence and symbol. Every president who walked its halls added a layer of meaning, shaping not only the politics of the nation, but also the myth of the house itself. The walls of the state dining room, the East Room, and eventually the Oval Office became silent witnesses to arguments, laughter, prayers, and secrets. From the beginning, it was not just a house, but a stage on which the great drama of America would unfold. Yet even in those early years, whispers of mystery accompanied the house. Workers spoke of strange echoes in the halls, of drafts that felt colder than they should, and of shadows lingering too long. It may have been the product of imagination, the isolation of the grounds, or the sheer weight of symbolism attached to the building, but the White House quickly became more than stone and mortar. It became a vessel for stories, both real and imagined. John Adams himself, before leaving the house, offered a solemn prayer that none of his successors should ever enter it without being mindful of the responsibility they carried. His words seemed almost prophetic, as if he sensed that the house itself would absorb the burdens of leadership, the weight of choices, and the mysteries of power. Abigail, walking the wide, cold halls, remarked on the sense of emptiness that clung to the structure, as though it awaited not just a family, but a destiny. By the early 19th century, as more rooms were finished and the Capitol grew around it, the president's house became less a construction project and more a living symbol. Still, the early generations of Americans viewed it with awe and some suspicion. For many, it felt too grand, too close to the palaces they had rejected by breaking away from Britain. Yet for others, it was a proud statement of national identity, a physical embodiment of the fragile experiment in democracy that had taken root in the New World. As years passed, its bright stone facade began to stand out like a beacon in Washington, gleaming in the sunlight, softened by shadows at dusk. Travelers arriving from across the young nation were drawn to it, knowing that inside its walls lived a man whose choices would affect their lives. The very sight of it stirred both reverence and curiosity. What conversations unfolded within those halls? What secrets did its rooms keep? Thus, from its earliest days, the White House was never just a residence. It was born from history, shaped by the ambitions of a young republic, and cloaked in a certain mystery that made it more than the sum of its stone and timber. The story of its origins blends light and shadow, pride and pain, hope and hardship. Yet together they create a house that would rise beyond being the home of one man, to become the living heart of a nation. When the White House was first completed, it stood as a beacon of stability for a young republic. But its permanence was soon tested in ways few could have imagined. Only a few years after John Adams and his family had settled into its unfinished rooms, the nation found itself at war again with Great Britain. In August 1814, as British troops marched on Washington, the capital was thrown into panic. The president's house, as it was then called, became a target, not only for its symbolic value, but also for the message it would send to burn down the heart of America's government. That fateful night, flames consumed the structure, and the sky above Washington glowed with the eerie orange light of destruction. Walls cracked, timbers collapsed, and what had been intended as the enduring seat of American democracy lay in smoldering ruin. Yet even in the chaos of that moment, a legend was born. Inside the White House, First Lady Dolley Madison refused to flee until she had secured one of the nation's most treasured relics, the portrait of George Washington painted by Gilbert Stuart. With British soldiers only minutes away, she ordered the frame broken apart and the canvas rescued, an act that became one of the most enduring stories of bravery in American history. It was as though she sensed the house itself could be rebuilt, but the symbol of Washington, the man who embodied the Republic, must never fall into enemy hands. This singular moment wrapped the White House in a veil of heroism, tragedy, and resilience that would cling to it for generations. After the flames died, the shell of the White House remained, charred but standing, like a ghostly skeleton on Pennsylvania Avenue. The decision to rebuild was not a simple one. Some suggested leaving the ruins as a scarred reminder of the war, while others thought the nation's leadership should move elsewhere. But the will to restore was stronger, a declaration that the Republic itself would not be defeated. Once again, James Hoban, the original architect, was called upon to oversee the reconstruction. With determination, the mansion rose again, brick by brick, stone by stone, as it defied the darkness that had tried to erase it. The restored house was both familiar and subtly different, its survival adding a new layer of meaning to the building. It was no longer just a residence. It was now a survivor of war, scarred but standing tall. Yet the White House would not remain frozen in time. Over the years, it evolved alongside the country it represented, undergoing expansions, renovations, and transformations to keep pace with history. Each alteration reflected not only the needs of the president within, but also the growing stature of the nation without. By the dawn of the 20th century, the White House was no longer simply a home. It had become a bustling center of government activity. Theodore Roosevelt, with his energetic personality, recognized that the old design was too small to accommodate the expanding responsibilities of the modern presidency. In 1902, he ordered the construction of the West Wing, a decision that would forever alter the function and image of the House. What had once been largely a residence became a true nerve center of executive power. The Oval Office would later emerge from this expansion, a room that has since become synonymous with leadership and command. The evolution of the White House did not stop there. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, leading the country to the Great Depression and World War II, found the West Wing inadequate for his needs. He ordered it expanded further, embedding within its walls the wartime decisions that would shape the destiny of the free world. Maps of battlefields were spread across its tables. Secret meetings were held in its chambers, and late at night, as the president wheeled himself through the corridors, the weight of the world seemed to rest on those walls. But perhaps the greatest transformation came under Harry S. Truman. By the late 1940s, engineers discovered that the very structure of the White House was failing. Floors sagged, beams cracked, and the historic residence was in danger of collapse. The image of the stately mansion was deceiving. It was, in truth, a hollow shell, weakened by years of modifications. Truman himself described it as the greatest shell game in history. For a moment, there was debate. Should the White House be abandoned, its shell preserved as a museum while a new executive residence was built elsewhere? The thought was chilling, for it meant severing the connection between the presidency and the very heart of its history. In the end, the decision was made to preserve the outward shell, but completely rebuild the interior. Between 1948 and 1952, the White House underwent one of its most dramatic transformations. Workers gutted the inside down to bare stone walls, constructing a steel frame within to support the building. During this period, Truman and his family lived across the street at Blair House, while behind the familiar white facade, a new skeleton of iron and steel gave strength to the old survivor. When Truman returned to the finished residence, the White House had been reborn once again, a fusion of history and modern engineering. The house that rose from fire in 1814 and again from reconstruction under Truman carried with it an almost mythical sense of resilience. Each crisis had threatened its existence, and each time it had emerged stronger, as though destiny itself guarded it. These transformations added mystery to its character. The public saw the same familiar columns and facade, but behind them lay a structure that had lived many lives, hiding secrets of fire, war, and renewal within its walls. Visitors walking its halls today tread on ground rebuilt by many hands, over layers of history that whisper of what once was lost and found again. The White House thus stands not as a static monument, but as a living entity, scarred and renewed, reflecting the fragility and strength of the nation it represents. Its story of destruction and rebirth is not merely architectural. It is symbolic of a republic that has faced threats, endured trials, and risen each time from the ashes. The mystery lies in its survival, the way it continues to stand tall against time, as though it is more than stone, more than wood and steel, but rather a vessel of continuity, holding within it the spirit of America itself. The White House has never been only a home. It has always stood as a stage for power, diplomacy, and decisions that ripple across the globe. Within its halls, leaders have conspired, debated, and negotiated, crafting policies that alter the course of nations. Each room has its purpose, each corner its story, and together they form a theater where America speaks not only to its own people but to the entire world. The Oval Office, with its distinct shape and symbolism, embodies its role most clearly. Unlike the square or rectangular chambers common to palaces and parliaments, the Oval's curves seem to eliminate sharp edges, evoking equality and unity. In this room, presidents have decided on war and peace, signed bills into law, and faced the immense loneliness of command. It is a space that radiates authority, yet within its silence lingers a weight of choices too great for any one person to bear. Photographs may show smiling handshakes, but the walls hold echoes of tense conversations, midnight doubts, and whispered strategies known only to those who once sat within. Beyond the Oval, the East Room has long served as a grand stage for the nation's public face. Its chandeliers and long polished floors have seen state dinners glitter with formality, but also moments of mourning when the nation grieved fallen leaders. Abraham Lincoln's coffin rested there, draped in black, and years later John F. Kennedy's did too, his death transforming the room into a place of national sorrow. Yet, the same space has echoed with music as presidents invited celebrated artists to perform, filling the air with a strange mixture of elegance and history. Visitors entering the East Room often remark that it feels haunted, not by spirits in a literal sense, but by the intensity of the moments that unfolded there, moments that changed the country's course. The Blue Room, with its curved walls and soft light, has always been a place of reception. Foreign monarchs, prime ministers, and dignitaries have been received there, and countless Christmas trees have been placed at its center, glowing with lights that seem almost to reflect the weight of tradition. It is a place where handshakes carry the subtle power of diplomacy. Sometimes exchange is cordial, sometimes strained, but always symbolic, for the White House is never neutral ground. Every foreign leader who steps inside is reminded that they are not merely entering a house, but walking into the symbolic heart of the United States. Deals have been struck in its drawing rooms, alliances confirmed, and occasionally, tensions quietly smoothed by the grace of formality. The Rose Garden, carefully designed and meticulously maintained, carries its own place in the narrative of diplomacy. Beneath its blooming flowers, history has unfolded in silence as world leaders walked side by side, talking privately while cameras stood at a distance. From announcements of peace accords to declarations of war, the Rose Garden has borne witness to the strange duality of politics, the desire for peace spoken in a place of beauty, even while wars rage elsewhere. The contrast itself gives the space an almost surreal aura, as if the fragrance of roses tries to mask the harsher scent of history being made. And then there are the secretive spaces, the rooms seldom shown to the public eye, where diplomacy moves beyond ceremony into strategy. The Situation Room, built during John F. Kennedy's presidency, became the hidden chamber command where military operations are monitored, crises are confronted, and presidents meet with advisors in moments of peril. It is here that some of the most consequential and most secret decisions of the modern age have been taken. Unlike the Oval Office or the East Room, it has no elegance, no grandeur. Its power lies in the urgency of the discussions it holds, a reminder that much of history is shaped not in grand ceremonies, but in tense, hidden meetings below ground. Throughout its history, the White House has been the host of both triumphs and failures of diplomacy. It welcomed Winston Churchill during World War II, when he and Franklin Roosevelt planned strategy, late into the night, cigars and brandy in hand, the air thick with the urgency of war. It opened its doors to leaders from the Soviet Union during the Cold War, the atmosphere taut with suspicion and ideological rivalry. In its dining rooms and reception halls, the fate of treaties, arms agreements, and alliances have been quietly determined. To the outside world, the White House appears permanent and serene, but behind closed doors, every visit carries tension, as though the building itself holds its breath when rival powers meet within. Foreign visitors often describe the White House as strangely modest compared to palaces in Europe or Asia, yet it is precisely in its restraint that its symbolism lies. Its beauty is dignified, its scale impressive without overwhelming, reflecting the democratic ideal that leadership should be approachable. Still, there is mystery in the way the building absorbs every encounter, every handshake, every speech, and every conflict. No matter how polished the surface may seem, the White House quietly records the undercurrents of rivalry and ambition, storing them like layers in a living archive. Even moments of peace carry with them echoes of fragility. Treaties signed in its rooms often feel fragile, as though the ink has barely dried before being tested by reality. Leaders who leave its halls smiling for cameras sometimes depart with private doubts lingering in their minds. This duality, the pageantry and the hidden uncertainty, adds to the White House's mystique. It is a place where symbols matter as much as substance, and where appearances are often crafted to send messages across oceans. For centuries, the White House has stood as the central stage of American diplomacy, a stage where allies are reassured, adversaries are measured, and the world watches carefully for every word and gesture. Its rooms carry the memory of ceremonies that dazzled and of meetings that chilled, of agreements celebrated and promises broken. In the silence after the guests leave, when the lights are dimmed and the corridors quiet, one can almost imagine the building itself whispering of what it has witnessed, the secrets it holds, the hopes it has seen raised, and the dangers it has watched unfold. The White House, in this sense, is more than just an office of state. It is a theater of power, a shrine of diplomacy, and a vessel of memory. To the world, it remains instantly recognizable, its white facade symbolizing leadership and stability. Yet to those who step inside, it carries an air of something deeper, something almost intangible. The knowledge that history has passed this way before and will continue to do so long after today's leaders are gone. Behind the towering columns and guarded gates of the White House lies a truth often overshadowed by ceremony and politics. It is, above all, a home. Families have lived here. Children have grown up within its walls, and ordinary moments of life have unfolded in the same corridors where history was being shaped. This mixture of private intimacy and public responsibility gives the White House a dual identity, one that makes it more than a symbol of power. It becomes a place of warmth, laughter, and sometimes sorrow, concealed behind a facade of formality. The mystery of this residence lies in how seamlessly it has absorbed the human stories of those who live within, while continuing to serve as the stage for the world's gaze. From the earliest days, first families have sought to carve out spaces of comfort amidst the grandeur. John Adams and his wife Abigail found themselves in a house still incomplete, the walls damp, the rooms cold and unfurnished. Yet even in that unwelcoming environment, Abigail created a home, hanging laundry in what would one day become a formal chamber. Their small gestures of domesticity revealed a truth that continues to this day. Presidents and their families live their private lives under the weight of immense responsibility, but they find ways to humanize the space. The echoing halls have heard children's laughter and footsteps, pets running freely, and birthday celebrations, blending the ordinary with the extraordinary. Throughout history, the presence of children in the White House has given it an almost magical quality, softening the sternness of politics. Theodore Roosevelt's 6 children turned the mansion into their playground, sliding down staircases, riding ponies on the grounds, and even keeping exotic pets that startled visitors. Later, John F. Kennedy's young children, John Jr. and Caroline, captured the world's imagination as they played in the Oval Office, their toys scattered near their father's desk while he discussed matters of war and diplomacy. Images of little John peeking out from under the resolute desk remind us that the White House is not only the seat of global decisions, but also a place where innocence thrives, even in the shadows of power. First ladies, too, have left their mark, shaping the atmosphere of the White House according to their vision. Some approached it as a stage for public life, while others sought to restore its history and elegance. Perhaps no transformation was more striking than that of Jacqueline Kennedy. When she entered the White House in the 1960s, she was appalled at its faded interiors and lack of historical authenticity. Determined to restore its dignity, she embarked on a mission to turn the residence into a living museum of American culture. Her televised tour, watched by millions around the world, revealed the house not only as a seat of government, but as a cultural treasure layered with history and art. Her vision forever altered the way the public saw the White House, ensuring that its walls reflected the heritage of the nation as much as the life of the family within. The White House grounds, too, became settings of intimacy and tradition. The South Lawn, now associated with helicopter landings and ceremonies, has also been a place for Easter egg rolls, where children laugh and play in the shadow of the great house. Generations of first families have planted trees in its gardens, their roots growing alongside the stories of those who came before. The Rose Garden, while a stage for momentous announcements, is also a place where families have walked quietly away from cameras, finding moments of peace amid the constant pressures of office. Even the rooms themselves, with their grand chandeliers and portraits of past leaders, have served as backdrops for private family dinners, where the conversations are not of war or policy but homework, school, and family plans. Yet, the intimacy of the White House has always been balanced by the inescapable presence of history. Imagine sitting down for a family meal beneath the watchful gaze of portraits of Washington, Lincoln, or Jefferson, knowing that every moment, even the private ones, would eventually belong to a greater story. The walls of the house carry memories of joy, but also of tragedy. Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt endured the weight of war within its rooms, but they also mourned the loss of their children who never returned from battle. John F. Kennedy's family brought vitality and youth to the mansion, only for it to be shrouded in grief after his assassination. The White House absorbs both extremes, joy and sorrow, and passes them on as part of its eternal narrative. The pets that have roamed its halls have also left their imprint on the house's story. From Abraham Lincoln's goats to Herbert Hoover's dogs, from the Roosevelt's menagerie to the Biden's cats and German shepherds, the presence of animals adds a light-hearted mystery to the grandeur. Guests arriving for formal events have sometimes been greeted not only by butlers in black coats, but also by barking dogs or wandering cats, reminders that behind the polished image lies a home alive with ordinary chaos. In many ways, The greatest mystery of the White House as a residence is how families have managed to create a sense of privacy in a house that belongs to the people, is constantly observed by the press, and is protected under the most intense security in the world. Children have grown up surrounded by Secret Service agents, their every move monitored, and yet many remember fondly the sense of wonder of living in what seemed a grand, if unusual, house. Behind the doors closed of public, family traditions have continued quietly, giving the White House its human heartbeat. The duality of the White House is what makes it so captivating. By day, it is a fortress of diplomacy, filled with official visitors and monumental decisions. By night, it becomes a home where the president reads bedtime stories, where first ladies decorate for holidays, and where family members seek comfort from burdens carried outside those walls. It is this balance of mystery and humanity that makes the White House unlike any other residence in the world. It is at once a palace and a family home, a place of power and of laughter, a stage for history, and a shelter for those who momentarily bear its weight. The White House is more than a building of stone, timber, and steel. It is a vessel of stories, mysteries, and legacies that stretch beyond the boundaries of time. To step inside its halls is to enter a place where the past lingers like a shadow, where whispers of history seem to follow with every turn. Each president who has lived there leaves behind a fragment of their spirit, and over 2 centuries, these fragments have merged into a collective aura that makes the White House feel less like a residence and more like a living memory. Its legacy is undeniable, but what makes it captivating is the way history and mystery intertwine, making it not only a political landmark but also a place of legend. Few tales capture this better than the ghost stories that surround the White House. For generations, staff members, guests, and even presidents themselves have claimed to sense the presence of Abraham Lincoln within its walls. His spirit is said to appear most often during moments of national crisis, as though the great emancipator returns to remind America of its higher purpose. Winston Churchill once reported seeing Lincoln's figure by the fireplace in the Lincoln bedroom, while Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands claimed she fainted after encountering the president's ghost at her door. The stories vary, but together they weave an air of mystery into the house, suggesting that the great weight of history never truly departs. Lincoln is not alone. Other spectral figures, including Abigail Adams and Dolley Madison, are said to wander the halls, their lingering presence blurring the line between past and present. Whether these accounts are truth or imagination, they contribute to the sense that the White House is not merely a stage for history, but also a repository of its spirits. Beyond ghostly tales, there are the enduring mysteries of the house itself. Whispers speak of secret tunnels and hidden chambers built for escape or secrecy, passages designed to connect the president with safety in times of peril. While some tunnels are confirmed, linking the White House to secure locations nearby, others remain part of speculation, fueling the fascination with what lies beneath the surface. Visitors see the grand facade, but beneath their feet may run hidden arteries of power, unseen and unknown to most. This dual nature, the visible and the hidden, adds to the building's enigmatic aura, as if the White House keeps secrets of its own, just as the presidents within often must. Its legacy, however, is not confined to stories of spirits or secrets. The White House has been the silent witness to events that define America's identity. Within its walls, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, reshaping the very meaning of freedom. Franklin Roosevelt delivered radio addresses that steadied the nation through the Depression and war. John F. Kennedy welcomed civil rights leaders to discuss the future of equality, moments that echoed far beyond the mansion's gates. The House has also borne the weight of tragedy. Lincoln's death plunged it into mourning, and nearly a century later, John F. Kennedy's assassination turned it once again into a place of grief as his widow and children returned from Dallas. In these moments, the White House was not only the setting for governance, but also the mirror of a nation's sorrow. The symbolism of the White House extends far beyond American borders. To the world, its image is instantly recognizable, standing as a beacon of leadership, democracy, and continuity. For allies, it represents stability and partnership. For adversaries, it embodies the power of the United States. Its white columns and stately symmetry have appeared in news broadcasts, films, and cultural memories so often that even those who have never set foot in Washington feel they know it. Yet what the world sees is only part of the truth. For every glittering state dinner broadcast to the public, there are countless private negotiations held in hushed tones. For every handshake in front of cameras, there are arguments, compromises, and decisions made far from the spotlight. This contrast between what is shown and what remains hidden is central to the White House's mystique. Over time, the building itself has become a lesson in resilience. It survived fire at the hands of the British in 1814, endured structural collapse in Truman's era, and withstood the pressures of war, terrorism, and political upheaval. Each time it seemed threatened, it emerged stronger, its survival a reflection of the endurance of the nation itself. The symbolism is powerful. Like America, the White House has been scarred, tested, and doubted, but it stands still, carrying forward its story to each new generation. The legacy of the White House is also deeply personal. Every family that has lived there has left their imprint. Children's laughter echoing in its corridors, first ladies reshaping its interiors, presidents pacing its rooms late into the night. The house absorbs these lives, blending them into its atmosphere. To walk its halls today is to walk through layers of memory, each invisible yet present. The chandeliers may gleam and the carpets may be new, but beneath them lies the accumulated weight of centuries of life, death, hope, and responsibility. Even in the age of modern media, when cameras reveal more than ever before, the White House retains its aura of mystery. Viewers may see press briefings, official addresses, or holiday decorations, but behind closed doors the true work continues, shielded from public view. It is this blend of openness and secrecy that defines the house's enduring symbolism. To Americans, it is the people's house, belonging not just to those who live there, but to the nation as a whole. To the rest of the world, it is a fortress of power, representing ideals larger than any individual. In the end, the White House is both legend and reality. It is at once a home and a citadel, a place of laughter and of sorrow, a stage for ceremony and a chamber for secrets. Its walls have absorbed more history than any one person could ever recount, and yet its greatest mystery lies ahead, in the stories still to be written by those who will walk its halls in the future. As long as it stands, the White House will remain not just the heart of American government, but a symbol of endurance, a monument where history and mystery forever meet. Through wars, fires, scandals, and triumphs, the White House has stood unbroken, a paradox of power and vulnerability, a fortress of secrets and a home of democracy. Its walls carry the laughter of children, the sorrow of loss, and the weight of decisions that changed the world. It is haunted by memory, alive with mystery, and eternal in its endurance. The White House is not just America's home. It is the soul of a nation, and its story is still being written. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to History Vault, your gateway to the past.